My name is Leora Vance. I am 29 years old, and I am a floral designer. My sister grabbed the microphone at my wedding, looked me up and down, and laughed. Then she said, in front of everyone, "Leora has always been the embarrassing one." People froze. A few actually smiled like they were waiting for more. I stood there in my white dress, heart pounding, while she lifted her glass like she owned the room. And in that moment, I felt control leave my hands and settle right into hers. Before I tell you what really happened, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. I wish I could say that was the first time my sister humiliated me. It wasn't. It was just the first time she did it while I was standing under a crystal chandelier next to the man I loved, with 120 guests staring at me. Her name is Sarah. She's older than me by 3 years, louder than everyone else in every room, and the kind of beautiful that makes people forgive her before she even asks. Growing up, she was always the sun. I was just the shadow that followed behind her. Even on my wedding day, somehow, she had found a way to make it about herself. The reception hall was glowing. Soft gold lights, white roses, glass candles flickering across every table. I had spent 6 months designing every detail myself. I wanted the room to feel warm, calm, elegant, safe. But the second Sarah stood up with that microphone, the whole place changed. She smiled first. That was the worst part. That polished, sweet smile that fooled strangers. "I just want to say how proud I am of my little sister," she said. A few guests clapped. Then she turned toward me, tilted her head, and added, "Because honestly, no one thought this day would happen for her." The room gave a strange little laugh. Not loud, not cruel, just enough. Enough to sting. I kept smiling because I didn't know what else to do. My cheeks felt stiff. My fingers tightened around my bouquet so hard I thought I might crush the stems. Sarah kept going. She was always the awkward one. Quiet, sensitive, a little desperate if we're being honest. She shrugged, casual as anything. So seeing her actually find someone willing to marry her, she laughed into the mic. It's kind of inspiring. This time, the laughter was thinner, nervous. Some people looked down. Some looked at me. Some looked at my husband. My husband, Kalen, had gone completely still beside me. I remember the exact sound my mother made then. A soft inhale, sharp, worried. But she didn't say a word. No one did. That was how it had always been with Sarah. She pushed. Everyone adjusted. I swallowed hard and told myself not to cry. Not here. Not in front of her. She loved tears. She loved knowing she had gotten under my skin. I had promised myself that today would be different, but then she gave me that look. The one from childhood. The one that said, "You still don't know how to stop me." She lifted the microphone again. I mean, look at her. She's trying so hard to seem polished tonight. It's cute, really. But she's still Leora. Still the girl who never fit in, never knew what to say, never quite belonged anywhere. Mocked, laughed at, named, reduced. Every word landed like a slap. I heard someone at the back whisper, "Oh my God." My throat tightened so badly I could barely breathe. And still, I stayed calm. That part matters, because people always expect the quiet girl to break first. They wait for the tears, the shaking voice, the ruined mascara, the scene. But I had spent too many years learning how to survive Sarah. I knew that if I lost control, she would win twice. So I just stood there, still, silent, composed. Inside, though, I was falling apart. I looked across the room and saw my aunt staring at me with pity. My cousin looked furious. One of Kalen's friends had half risen from his chair, then sat back down. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. That hurt more than the words, because they all knew. They all knew Sarah had done this to me my whole life. The little comments, the public jokes, the backhanded compliments, the way she called me dramatic, embarrassing, fragile, forgettable, the way people laughed because it was easier than challenging her. Even the morning of my wedding, she had leaned into my suite, looked at my dress hanging by the window, and said, "Bold choice. I mean, if you wanted something that made your shoulders look softer, this probably wasn't it." Then she smiled and kissed my cheek. That was Sarah. She never needed knives. She used whispers. At the head table, I could feel Kalen's jaw tense. He still hadn't moved, hadn't interrupted, hadn't touched me. And for one horrible second, a darker thought slipped into my mind. What if she had embarrassed him too? What if this was the moment he saw me the way she always described me? Small, awkward, less than. My breath caught. Sarah took one slow sip of champagne, then looked directly at him. But really, Kalen, she said, her voice turning syrupy and cruel. I do have to ask. The whole room went silent. She smiled wider, and then she said the one thing that made my blood run cold. Did you marry my sister out of love or pity? I turned to look at Kalen, and the expression on his face made my heart stop. Kalen did not look shocked. He looked done. His eyes stayed on Sarah for one long second. Then he reached for the microphone in her hand. The whole room held its breath. Sarah laughed lightly, like this was still her show, still her stage. Oh, come on, she said. It was a joke. But Kalen took the microphone anyway, and when he spoke, his voice was calm. Too calm. That kind of calm that makes people stop moving. No, he said. It wasn't. The air changed. I felt it before I understood it. Sarah's smile flickered, just a little. Her chin lifted, but I saw it. That tiny crack. The first sign that she might have misjudged the room, misjudged him. Kalen turned slowly, not to me, not yet, but to the guests. I've stayed quiet for years, he said, because Leora asked me to. She always hoped her sister would change. She always said, please don't make it worse. So I respected that. I stayed out of it. My heart dropped. Years? My hands went cold around the edge of the table. Sarah gave a short laugh. Years? You're being dramatic. He ignored her completely. But since she wants to humiliate my wife on our wedding day, he said, voice sharper now, I think everyone deserves the truth. The room went still. Not polite still, not curious still. That heavy kind of silence. The kind that settles right before something breaks. My mother lowered her glass. My father finally looked up. And Sarah, for the first time all night, stopped smiling. I stared at Kalen, my breath caught somewhere in my throat. We had talked about boundaries, about distance, about surviving family events without turning them into battles. But I had never seen this look in his eyes before. He wasn't angry in the loud way. He was certain, and certainty is much more dangerous. She calls Leora embarrassing, he said. But what's actually embarrassing is what she's been doing behind the scenes. Sarah's voice came out quick and sharp. Excuse me? Kalen turned to face her then. You heard me. Her face hardened. You don't get to attack me because I made one harmless speech. Harmless? His voice stayed level. You mocked her, laughed at her, called her desperate, awkward, embarrassing, and asked me if I married her out of pity. Sarah crossed her arms. Because she's always acted like some tragic victim. Everyone here knows that. No one answered. Not one person. I could hear the soft hum of the ceiling lights, the clink of glass from a shaking hand somewhere behind us. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. Then Kalen said, should I start with the flowers? My head snapped toward him. The flowers? Sarah blinked. What are you talking about? He looked at me for the first time. His expression softened, but only for a second. Then he faced the room again. 3 weeks ago, he said, our florist canceled without warning. Several people frowned. They knew that part. Most of them had heard there had been some scheduling issue, some vendor mess, some last-minute disaster that Leora somehow fixed without sleeping for 2 days. What they didn't know was why. I knew because I had cried in a supply closet over it. What I didn't know was how much Kalen knew. He continued. The florist didn't cancel by accident. She was pressured to back out. Sarah laughed again, but now it sounded strained. Oh, this is ridiculous. Kalen reached into his jacket pocket. My stomach dropped because I knew that movement. Paper, printed paper, He pulled out a folded sheet and held it up. "I have the messages," he said. The room went silent. Not a whisper. Not a cough. Nothing. Sarah's face drained so fast, I actually saw the color leave. I stared at her. No. No. A sick feeling rose in my chest. That awful kind of understanding that comes a second before denial fails. Kaylin unfolded the page. "The florist contacted me after she found out who I was." Sarah's mouth opened. "Who you were?" He looked at her evenly. "Yes, the groom. The man paying the final invoice you told her I couldn't afford." A woman at table 6 actually gasped. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." My fingers went numb. Sarah shook her head quickly. "That's not true." Kaylin read anyway. "You may want to reconsider working with Leora Vance," he said, reading from the page. "She's unstable under pressure. She can't pay on time, and the wedding itself may not even happen. I'd hate for your business to be attached to that mess." I couldn't move. That was her. That was Sarah's voice, even on paper. Clean, smiling, poisoned. Kaylin lowered the page slightly. There were more messages. Suggestions that she was doing the florist a favor, that our event would look cheap, that Leora had a history of being difficult and emotionally unstable. My chest hurt. The room blurred for a second, not from tears exactly, but from the force of trying not to break in front of everyone. I remembered that day. The florist had called me sounding strange, careful, distant, saying she had an emergency, saying she had to step away, saying she was sorry. I had believed her. I had apologized to her. I had thanked her for at least telling me early enough to replace her. And all along, it had been Sarah. She had smiled through my panic. She had even helped pin sample ribbons to a board while I scrambled to fix it. I looked at her now. Really looked at her. And I did not see a sister. I saw a woman who had watched me drown and adjusted my veil. Sarah's voice sharpened. "That proves nothing. Anyone could fake messages." Kaylin nodded once, like he had expected that. "That's why I also spoke to the florist directly. She forwarded the email chain from your account." My mother made a broken sound under her breath. My father went white. Still, Sarah pushed forward. "Even if I did say something, maybe I was trying to protect you. Leora has always made a mess of things." There it was again, that same old move. Hurt me, then call it help. Mock me, then call it honesty. Wound me, then say I'm too sensitive for bleeding. But Kaylin wasn't finished. "And then," he said, "there was the dress." My whole body went cold. The dress? I slowly turned toward him. There had been one week, one terrifying week, when my dress almost didn't fit right. The seam at the back had been loosened. The beadwork on one side had partly detached. My tailor had looked confused, then careful, then uncomfortable. She said it looked like someone had handled it roughly while it was still unfinished. I had assumed bad storage. Clumsy staff. Bad luck. Sarah had been with me the day I picked it up. Sarah had also insisted on checking it out the night before the final fitting. I could barely breathe. Sarah snapped, louder now. "Kaylin, enough." But his eyes never left hers. "No," he said, "not enough." He looked out at the guests again. My wife spent this entire week blaming herself for disasters she did not cause. She stayed graceful. She stayed calm. She kept protecting people who never protected her. My throat tightened. I wanted to tell him to stop. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. And at the same time, for the first time in my life, I wanted someone to keep going. Sarah stepped forward. "Leora, tell him to stop. This is humiliating." I finally found my voice. It came out low, steady, almost unfamiliar. "You should have thought about that before tonight." She turned toward me so fast her earrings swung. "So now you're pretending you didn't know any of this?" Pretending. That word hit something deep in me. All those years, all those dinners, all those birthdays, all those tiny cuts dressed up as jokes. The mocking, the laughing, the comparisons, the whispers, the way I was always too plain, Too quiet, too emotional, too embarrassing. Insult after insult after insult. And suddenly, I was tired. Not fragile, not shaky, just tired. "I didn't know," I said, "but I'm starting to understand a lot." Her expression shifted then. Not guilt, panic, because she could feel it, the power moving. The room no longer belonged to her. People were staring at her now, not me. My aunt looked disgusted. My cousin wouldn't even sit down. One of Kaylin's groomsmen muttered, "Unbelievable." Someone else whispered, "She sabotaged her own sister's wedding?" Sarah looked around and saw it too. The control she'd walked in with was gone, and that was when she made the mistake that changed everything. She looked straight at me, voice trembling with anger, and said, "Fine, I did it, because someone had to say what everyone was thinking." The room froze. Then she pointed at me, and what she said next made even Kaylin go still. "He was supposed to choose me." The words hung in the air like something broken. No one moved. No one breathed. My heart stopped. "What did you just say?" I whispered. Sarah didn't look away, not this time. Her chest was rising and falling fast, but her eyes were locked on mine. Wild, desperate, cornered. "I said," she repeated, louder now, "he was supposed to choose me." A ripple went through the room, sharp inhales, chairs shifting. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered against the floor, but no one even turned to look, because all eyes were on her, on us, on the truth finally tearing itself open. I felt something inside me go completely still. Not pain, not anger, just clarity. Kaylin didn't speak right away. That was the part that scared me. He just stared at her like he was trying to understand how someone could say something like that out loud. On this day, in this moment. Sarah took a step forward. "You met him first," she said to me, her voice shaking now. "But you never should have kept him." A murmur spread through the guests. My fingers curled slowly at my sides. I remembered the first time I introduced Kaylin to my family, how Sarah had smiled too brightly, how she had lingered too long in conversations with him, how she had started showing up unannounced when he visited, how she laughed at his jokes louder than anyone else. I had noticed. I just hadn't let myself believe it. "You don't get to rewrite this," I said quietly. She laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Rewrite? Please. You were always the backup version of everything. The quieter one, the easier one, the one people settled for." The words should have hurt. Years ago, they would have destroyed me, but standing there, in that room, with everyone finally seeing her the way I had always felt her, they didn't land the same, because for the first time, she didn't sound powerful. She sounded small. Kaylin finally spoke. "Stop," he said. Just one word, but it cut through everything. Sarah turned to him instantly, like she always did, like she expected him to soften, to explain, to take her side somehow. "Tell them," she said quickly. "Tell them how we connected. Tell them how you used to talk to me more than her. Tell them." "I talked to you," Kaylin said, "because you inserted yourself into every conversation." Silence. Not a soft silence, a sharp one, the kind that slices. Her lips parted. "That's not true." "It is," he said. Calm, certain. "You followed me around at family gatherings. You messaged me late at night with questions that had nothing to do with Leora. You kept trying to create moments that didn't exist." People shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered, "Wow." Sarah shook her head faster now. "No, you're twisting it. You like the attention." "I tolerated it," he replied. "For Leora." That hit. I saw it land on her face like a physical blow. "But I made it clear," he continued, "again and again. I told you I was with her. I told you I wasn't interested. I told you to stop." My breath caught. I hadn't known that. Not fully. Not like this. Sarah's voice cracked. You never said it like that. I did, he said. You just chose not to hear it. The room went completely still again. Because now it wasn't just ugly, it was undeniable. Sarah looked around, searching for someone, anyone, to back her up. My mother couldn't meet her eyes. My father looked like he wanted to disappear. Her friends at table 4 stared down at their plates. No one stepped in. No one defended her. For the first time in her life, she stood alone. And she felt it. You're lying, she said, but her voice was thinner now. Both of you, you're making me look crazy. Kalen didn't react. He just said, You did that yourself. A long pause, then my aunt stood up slowly. Sarah, she said, her voice heavy with disappointment. This isn't okay. That was it. Not yelling, not drama, just truth. And somehow, that hurt her more. I was just being honest, Sarah snapped, turning toward her. Everyone here has thought it. She's always been… Enough. The word came from me this time. Soft, controlled, final. She turned back to me, breathing hard. I stepped forward. Not fast, not aggressive, just steady. I spent my whole life believing you, I said. My voice didn't shake. Every time you called me embarrassing, every time you laughed at me, every time you made me feel like I wasn't enough. My throat tightened for a second, but I didn't stop. I believed you because you said it so confidently, and everyone stayed quiet. I looked around the room. Some people lowered their eyes, some didn't. I thought something was wrong with me, I continued, that I had to shrink, stay quiet, be less, so you could stay comfortable. A pause. Then I looked back at her. But today, you didn't expose me. My voice softened. You exposed yourself. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe she didn't, because I didn't feel like the same person either. You tried to ruin my wedding, I said. You sabotaged my work. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I took a slow breath. And still, I didn't break. That part echoed. People felt it. I could see it in their faces, the shift, the understanding, the quiet respect. Sarah's lips trembled. You think this makes you better than me? I shook my head gently. No, I said. It just means I finally see you clearly. Another silence, heavier this time. Then Kalen stepped beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. Not shielding me, not speaking for me, standing with me. That was the difference. He took my hand, and for the first time since this started, I let myself breathe. The tension in the room slowly changed shape. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was settling. People shifting in their seats. Whispers starting again, but different now. Softer, thoughtful. Shock turning into realization. Public reaction, not laughter, not entertainment. Truth. Sarah looked around one last time, like she was trying to find the version of the room she walked into. It wasn't there anymore. Her control, gone. Her image, cracked. Her voice came out small. So, that's it? You're all just going to turn on me? No one answered. That was her answer. She let out a short, broken laugh. Then she placed the microphone slowly on the table. The sound was louder than it should have been. And without another word, she walked out. No applause, no chase, just silence following her to the door. The moment it closed behind her, the entire room seemed to exhale at once. I didn't realize I was shaking until Kalen squeezed my hand. You okay? He whispered. I nodded, but the truth was, I didn't know what I was yet. Relieved, exhausted, free. All of it at once. I looked around at the faces that had once felt like pressure. Now they felt like witnesses to something ending and something else beginning. I took a slow breath, lifted my chin, and picked up the microphone. Because this time, I had something to say.